All right, great. Welcome folks for being here. And hello to the folks who are watching this online afterwards and were not able to join us for whatever reason. We are very excited to talk about this program in development, prospective program, planned program, which we are tentatively at the moment calling the DEI Practitioner's Certificate. My name is Saralyn Smith. I use she, her pronouns. I will introduce myself and my co-facilitator here in a little bit, in a minute. But first, I want to cover just a couple of housekeeping items for the folks who are here today. So the first is that you'll find your cameras and your microphones are muted by default. We have 90 people registered for today, even though we have a fairly small number at the moment. So we do that just to kind of keep everything kind of clean and tidy as people are coming in. If you do have questions along the way, please go ahead and put them in the chat. We will have a few opportunities for engagement with you, and I'll talk about those in a moment. So, but if you do have any questions or if you have any trouble using those other engagement tools, please definitely use the chat. Denise and I will be keeping an eye on that throughout the session today. As you saw when either you came in or I started recording, we are recording this session so that we can share it with folks who are not able to join us today, and also preserve your feedback that we get during the session. So that's very important to us. I am going to go ahead and turn on the live transcription, which is a tool that we use in Zoom to put subtitles on the bottom of the screen for those who need them. If you do not want that, if you find it distracting, you can click on where there's the little, it looks like the closed caption icon on your toolbox or on your toolbar, and you can click hide subtitle, which in fact I'm going to do right now. There it is. But we want it available for those who need it. Like I said, we're going to have a few different ways for you to engage today. The first one obviously is the Zoom chat, which I've already talked about. We're going to use for a couple of little activities, something called Slido. So you will see when it comes up on the screen, go to slido.com and use this code. Or there will be a QR code on the screen that you can scan, and it will allow us to collaborate and build a couple of word clouds so that we can visualize some of this information about the challenges that you all are experiencing, what topics you're interested in, those kinds of things. And then finally, we'll also have a couple of Zoom polls throughout today's session. Honestly, mostly because I can only do 3 Slido items with my account. So this is just another way for us to capture some of that information. I know sometimes it can be a little confusing to have multiple things. So like I said, if you ever have any issue using those Slido or the polls, just go ahead and use the chat. I would much rather get your thoughts somehow than not get them at all. So with that, the last housekeeping item before we move on to introductions and the meat of our conversation today is that I do want to do a land acknowledgement. This is the land acknowledgement from the Office of Equity Inclusion here at University of Washington, Tacoma. It's on the screen, but I'm going to read it out loud as well. We recognize that all of us at UW Tacoma learn, live, and work on or near the ancestral homeland of the Coast Salish people. In particular, our campus, UW Tacoma, is situated on the traditional territory of the Puyallup. Since we're gathered virtually, we also want to acknowledge the lands of the Muckleshoot, Nisqually, Duwamish, Chehalis, and all of the other traditional lands that we may be on, and potentially beyond that, because I know some of you are not here in Washington. As people on these occupied territories, we have a responsibility to acknowledge the land, the ancestors who have cared for this land since time immemorial, and all our Indigenous communities and connections today. We also have the responsibility to acknowledge the histories of dispossession and forced removal that have allowed for the growth and survival of this nation and this actual institution. In light of this history, let us take active efforts to partner with our Indigenous community members and neighbors to seek justice as we continue our work together as a community of learners, leaders, and educators. So thank you everyone for letting us hold that space for that thought today. The plan for today is we're going to do some introductions. Denise and I will introduce ourselves, and then I'm going to launch a Zoom poll for us to kind of see who all is in the room today, although there's only 3 of you so far. So I think we'll probably open that up for people to introduce themselves if you're comfortable with that, given that it is being recorded. Denise and I will share a little bit about the program that we are looking at putting into place. And then we want to get some feedback from you about what we are thinking, about what topics you're interested in and what your needs are. This is going to go pretty quick because we are starting a little bit late. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the screen share for now while we do our introductions. So again, my name is Saralyn Smith. I am a program development manager here at University of Washington Tacoma's Professional Development Center. And I use she, her pronouns. I am a white cisgendered queer woman who has been interested in this work for a long time. I'm very excited that we have some support behind getting to do this. I provide support to our instructors on curriculum development, as well as all the practical management of the program in collaboration with my colleagues here at the Professional Development Center. Denise, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name's Denise Miño, and I use she, her pronouns. I come to you from the Chehalis Reservation in Southwest Washington, where I am a learning and development specialist for the Chehalis tribe. I'm originally from Hawaii and have Japanese American ancestry. My passion for adult learning has been sparked by attending a UW program called the Certified Public Manager program that I attended in 2018-2019. And prior to that, I worked for state government for over 20 years and was heavily involved in diversity efforts. And at the time they were called multicultural efforts, right? Not necessarily specifically diversity, equity, inclusion. And so within my agency, I served as the coordinator for the agency, again, a volunteer position, but I had a passion for the work. Through that time, I did see a lot of inequities, right? I'm sure we've all experienced many things. And my desire for access to a diversity specific certificate helped me get involved with this program. So I now also teach for the Certified Public Manager program and some other leadership classes for UW Tacoma and Professional Development Center. And I care passionately about the work. So, and I'm also an industrial and organizational psychologist, just finishing up my master's. So glad to be here with you.
Thanks, Denise. The folks who are here, since there's such a few number of you, I'm not going to launch the poll. It seems a little silly. If you want to just introduce yourself in the chat box, though, that would be great. Just who you are, where you're dialing in from today, whether that's salient for you geographically or your organization, and a little bit about why you're interested maybe in being here today. Give you a minute to type. I like put bets on whose response is going to come in the chat first. Welcome, Diego. Oh, great. Okay. Yes, it is definitely an exciting time to do this work. Out of curiosity, do you work with like, I don't know how AAA is structured, but do you work with the kind of corporate or with a local office or? Okay. For now, I like that. Diego's got ambitions. Hi, Terry. Oh, great. Yeah, with the League of Women Voters. Oh, Diego, very cool. Very, very cool. And then I know a little bit about Philip because Philip has come to a number of our things. I recognize his name out of Baltimore, I believe. I think what I'm going to do then is go ahead and move on to our the first question that I want to ask y'all, and we'll wait for Philip's. We'll see Philip's come in when he's able. Let me get this shared back again. So Denise, we're going to start that first question for folks.
All right, so folks, if you want to take your phone out and scan the Slido, or if you want to join separately, slido.com, and that number is 2045114. Our question is, what is the biggest challenge you and your organization has right now in achieving DEI goals, or even creating a more inclusive organization? So what sorts of challenges are you facing right now? Is it policy related? Is it buy-in from leadership? Is it training? You know, how far along are you on your leadership journey? So once you start putting in some content there, it should start popping up. So we'll give you a few minutes to type that in. Very good. Commitment from leaders and time. Yeah. So is it time to do the work, or time for them to listen, or what is it? Time for training? Right. These conversations are often uncomfortable, and the work is slow moving, right? I can see why there would be hesitation, because we've not done this work, right? We've not showed up for our folks in a way that's been supportive in the past. So where do we start? That can be another challenge, right? There's so much to do. It can be overwhelming. It can be intimidating. Yep.
I'm hoping that means, and you can answer this in the chat, whoever put that in, but I'm hoping that means that's similar to uncomfortable, that it's kind of intimidating to start the work, and not that there is someone intimidating people out of doing the work, which is, I shouldn't laugh that off, because it definitely happens in organizations. But it's always my hope that it's not.
Yeah. Well, very good. So
Okay.
I think that's a good place to start. Thank you for contributing to that. Saralyn?
Yeah. So I'm going to do a little bit of information sharing with you about what we're looking to do and where we're at right now in that work. So why are we looking at doing a certificate for DEI practitioners specifically? So not necessarily just a general DEI or general inclusive leadership, but we're specifically talking about training for people who are going to fill a DEI role or be a DEI consultant, that sort of thing. The first reason is obviously it's very deeply connected to the mission of the University of Washington, Tacoma. The university has been developing out internally training for faculty, administrative staff to tackle structural equity and inclusion issues on campus, as well as the external work that's being done through groups like the Office of Community Partnerships and the Office of Equity and Inclusion with community partnerships. As we've kind of mixed up our offerings of DEI programming over the last few years, we've had students express an interest for advanced programming, right? Like, how do we take this to the next step? How do we actually implement these things? How can we do something larger than just a couple of workshops here and there? And then the biggest one, and it's something that I've been interested in for a number of years, is meeting this need that exists for that advanced DEI training, and specifically for professionals who have the skills to create actual lasting change within organizations while managing the day-to-day responsibilities of the DEI function, right? So there have been, as the number of DEI roles and official jobs in organizations has grown over the last 10 to 15 years, there has not necessarily been a strong growth in programs or frameworks or structures, whether that's organizational or educational, that give people in those roles the actual tools that they need to create successful organizational change in this area. And to balance the sometimes competing needs of doing that organizational change and this management of the day-to-day responsibilities of the DEI function, right? Which often includes compliance, employee relations, like it's very complex. And so our hope is that a program like the certificate could be an accessible way, in terms of pricing, especially for people to be able to get that training, and if needed, the line on their resume, they have that qualification without having to do something like a PhD program or a master's program. And ultimately, right, the approach that we want to take with this is going to move the profession, the DEI profession forward, right? Move it out of what is often a very compliance-oriented outlook, partly because of where it's situated within an organization. They're often in HR, and so there's often a very heavy compliance component. And we know that there is a greater need for that, right? And so on that point, actually, Denise is going to talk a little bit about her experiences and how she's seen the need or the potential impact of this kind of a program. I think that's what we talked about, right? For you to share?
Yep.
Okay.
So I had mentioned that I had worked in state government for many years, and some of the things I saw were, we were trying to move the needle or move folks along in the continuum, leadership especially, because if we don't have buy-in from leadership, upper management, then these change initiatives are going to fail, right? And so as best intending as we were, our small group of folks in the multicultural work group, we were trying to impact policy change. We were trying to help influence the hiring practices that the organization held. And bring in more, I guess, provocative speakers in an organization that has been traditionally risk adverse, right? So even bringing in speakers to talk about diversity was a hard sell. So that was several years ago. And so Saralyn and I have had many conversations about the need for an actual interactive course, right? Not just an online course, because there's a lot of online certificate courses and DEI work these days, but something where practitioners could come together, share ideas, collaborate. We talked about a cohort model where we can say what's working in our organization, or wow, we have that same challenge in at my work, right? So the goal would be to address these challenges, to feel like you're not alone in these efforts, because burnout in the DEI field is high, because the work is emotional, right? It's emotionally charged, it's intense a lot of the times, and it feels like pushing a boulder uphill at times. So those are just some of my reflections on why this program is important, and specifically this model, this cohort model, that I believe is going to be most effective. Saralyn?
Great. That is a beautiful transition. It's talking about, the structure and the type of program that we're looking at doing. Where we are right now is still very much in the ideation stage, right? So we are partially with Denise's help and partially with the help of some other present and past instructors in our department, have been recruiting a group of a diverse group of trainers and DEI professionals to help figure out what this program should look like, and then craft the actual content. So what I'm going to share with you, though, is kind of some of the basics about what those conversations have revealed so far, and kind of where our heads, our collective heads, are at regarding what this program might look like. So the first one is the goal of the program, right? At the moment, we are conceiving it as something that should create or foster DEI practitioners who can lead effective organizational efforts using a trauma-informed, anti-racist, inclusion-centered approach. Again, going back to the idea of moving the DEI profession forward from being just concerned with compliance and kind of coming up to where the social justice and other types of change movements are, right? So bringing in these other components to have a fuller approach to doing DEI work in an organization. We are looking at doing this as a non-degree certificate. So it would issue CEUs and a certificate of completion from the Professional Development Center, but not academic credit. We do that partly so we can keep the price a little bit lower, and because it allows us a little bit of flexibility in terms of bringing in content that is maybe more practical, has we can mix up. You don't have to do a big exams within the program, those kinds of things, right? We are hoping to align it with an independent certification that I'll talk about more in a minute. And we are targeting kind of 201 level content. And what I mean by that is we would expect that people who come into this program have a baseline knowledge of DEI issues and DEI work, right? So this is not going to be for beginners. We will develop some sort of, guidepost for how to decide if this program is, appropriate for you if you meet that condition. But this should at least be people who are already engaged. They see the value of the work. They've done some internal work on their own, right? And want to move on to the next step. We originally were targeting a winter 2023 launch. That is at this point probably a little ambitious, but it's still what we're hoping for. So we are hoping to launch this year. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet. Like Denise said, we are almost certainly going to do some sort of cohort model where you come in with one group of people and you move through the entire program with them. We just don't know for sure how long that program is going to be and those kinds of things. Yeah. All right. So the certification that I mentioned is a certification through a group called the Institute for Diversity Certification, which is affiliated with the Society for Diversity and something or other. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on their name.
Yes.
Okay. It is so they have both competencies as well as full curriculum that they have developed. There is an exam and a capstone project that are required that then they issue this certificate or excuse me, this credential. What we are looking at doing with them is partnering with them to essentially align a program that we create. So all the content would be created by UW Tacoma and this group of people that I'm convening, or that we are convening. But that is aligned with and would prepare people for the CDP exam and also take care of the capstone project requirement that goes along with the exam without teaching to the test, right? So this program would be more expansive. It would fill in some gaps that we see in the CDP content, while still preparing you to take that exam if you so choose. The exam would not be required. So if the certificate on its own is what you want, then that's fine. People could do the certificate without the certification, but the certification would be an option. So, so that's the big picture of what we're looking at right now and kind of where we are. If anybody has questions at this point about what we've covered so far, go ahead and put them in the chat. The next thing that we're going to move to after I give you a moment for that is getting some feedback and input from you all. So I'll give you just a minute to, if you do have any questions so far, to go ahead and put that in the chat. All right. Okay. So then the first thing that I would like to get your feedback on, those of you who are in the room, are the competencies that I mentioned from the CDP. We want to make sure that if we go into this relationship and align with this certification, that those competencies are actually relevant and desired, right, by the folks who are interested in our program. So what I'm going to do is launch a little Zoom poll here. And what I would like you to do, that didn't update correctly. It's fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read through the, actually give me just a moment. Bear with me here for just a moment. Sorry, I'm having a little issue on my side. Bear with me, folks. Okay, great. There it is. So I'm going to take a few minutes to actually read through these competencies for you so that you understand what the what the little title of them mean. What I would love to do is for you to rate those in the poll that comes up on a scale of 0 to 10 in terms of how important that competency or how interesting that competency is to you specifically. You can define, how you decide that, whether that means in your current job or what you're looking at in the future. But we just kind of want to do a little straw poll about how folks feel about these competencies. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that. And then I'm going to read through these for you. So the first one is the role of a diversity practitioner, which is about putting together it's kind of what it says on the tin, right? So what does it mean to be a diversity professional? Creating strategic plans and developing standard operating procedures and effectively communicating the role of a diversity practitioner. So that's that first one. You can go ahead and rate how important or valuable that is to you. The second one is the business case for diversity and inclusion, which is justifying the case for maximizing workplace diversity and inclusion efforts by using traditional business principles, writing a business case, and gaining support for your efforts. Equal opportunity laws in the US and abroad is very much some of that compliance piece that we've mentioned several times here, but looking at it from looking at differences in discrimination policies, addressing unprofessional and illegal behavior, those kinds of things. Harassment around the world is similar, but focus more on how to advise managers and employees about preventing and correcting harassment in the workplace, and developing those procedures rather than just the legal component. Diversity, retention, and recruiting. Coordinating best practices and techniques to recruit, onboard, develop, include, and engage, as well as retain a diverse workforce. Oh no, disabled. Why? Let's relaunch that and see. How about now? That poll coming up for you? This is not the piece of tech that I was worried about having problems with today. Can you give me a thumbs up if nope, still not working? Okay, well, we will just not do the poll then. That's fine, it's not vital. All right, so diversity, recruiting, and retention. The next one is reinventing diversity training. So looking at the training that really results in the acquisition of new skills, the practice of intentional behaviors, or positive change in org culture, from trying to break the old models, kind of look at something new. Handling difficult conversations, dealing with those complex conversations about diversity, as well as developing an effective message of inclusion for employees, students, patients, customers, etc., and other stakeholders. Resource groups and diversity councils, collaborating with and delegating to internal allies in order to analyze the organizational climate, integrate diversity and inclusion within business units, and achieve mission-centered objectives. Empowering women in the workplace. I feel like that one's fairly self-explanatory. Disability and special needs accommodations, encouraging employees to eliminate the stereotypes associated with workers who have visible and non-visible disabilities, help supervisors provide appropriate accommodations. Generational intelligence. So rather than intergenerational workforce or something like that, I like this title. preparing the workplace for changes in the organizational scope and structure by acknowledging generational differences in the approach to work, as well as expectations for management. Designing programs for veterans, improving an organization's ability to do that, right? Immigrant groups in the workplace, modifying diversity terminology, policies, and practices to include nationality, as well as create more opportunities for employees to learn about and work in different cultures. Navigating through religion and belief systems. So, you know, there's a lot of complexities around how do you deal with religion and non-religion at work. And helping supervisors and employees work through issues when they are come into conflict potentially with those sincerely held beliefs. LGBTQ plus inclusion, building places that are discrimination and work and harassment free, as well as practices that are fair. And finally, measuring the impact of diversity and inclusion. So evaluating diversity and inclusion efforts by assessing the achievement of annual plan goals, identifying areas for improvement, and directing future progress. Calculating quantifiable benefit or return on investment for diversity and inclusion work. So kind of tying back in with that, the business case for diversity and inclusion. So, since the poll didn't work, I'm curious, for those of you who are here live, if there are any of those competencies that seem most important and relevant for your work or the work that you're looking at doing. You can go ahead and pop that in the chat. And again, these are competencies that are the framework for the CDP and the CDP exam. So this would not be the whole of our program, but these would be some of the foundational competencies that our program would address.
And I would like to add that it's one thing to have the knowledge, right, and to learn about the competencies. Where we take this a step further with this new program is that we are going to talk about practical application and skill building so that you can be successful in implementing new processes and procedures in your organization, and also how to work with tribes, right, working with tribes, communities of color. That's going to be part of our learning and discussions along the way too.
Yeah. Thanks, Diego. Yeah, I really like that they call out veterans groups. I think it's really interesting that they call out immigrant groups in the workplace, right? Because there are some very specific needs when you have folks who are coming from different countries, and they're dealing with much, you know, with sometimes very different issues regarding, you know, visa status and stereotyping and different things like that. So yeah, I appreciate that. So I think the next, we're going to go ahead and Denise move on to the next question. Now that they've seen the competencies. Thanks, Terry.
Yep. Very good. All right, so we're back to Slido. And if you want to go to slido.com, again, we're 2045114 is our event code. And this poll question is, what other DEI topics or skills would you want to see in a certificate program? So I think one of those key components is change management, right? How do you implement change, and what are some of the change management models? There's also that practical application piece, right? Once you've developed the knowledge, how do you build the skills and abilities to apply that? And then that capstone, getting support with a capstone is going to be critical too. So what other DEI topics or skills would you want covered in a certificate program? Do you work in the nonprofit world? Do you work in for-profit, government? So what else is there that would help bridge the gaps of your learning in order for you to be successful at implementing DEI strategies in your work, or even getting a certificate so that you can apply for jobs such as DEI manager? Supporting Native Americans, neurodiversity, absolutely. Yep, neurodiversity is a big one. Working up, supporting tribes and Native peoples, project management. Yep, it's a good one. Very good. Others, public speaking, very good. Yep, public speaking is important because you've got to be able to walk into a conference room and present on a topic, right? So creating a presentation and then packaging it and delivering it. Very good. Okay. Well, let's go to our next poll question, our next Slido. And that is, what would make the biggest difference in moving the needle on DEI in your organization? So if sky's the limit and you had resources, knowledge, what is the biggest thing right now that you think would impact your organization to move the needle for DEI work? Is it everybody gets training? Is it leadership gets advanced training? Is it a new hiring initiative? Creating new policies? Is it better community engagement? Employee resource groups internally? What would that look like?
And if you're having any issues with Slido, again, you can just go ahead and type your responses in the chat box. That
Right.
makes more sense.
Right. Okay. Good. Right. Okay. So learning to engage cisgender white men rather than isolating them, right, which can cause hostility. Absolutely. Right. We want everybody to come along in the journey, right? We want to be bridge builders in this process. Board commitment. Yep. We've got to make the case for diversity so that leadership from the top down will be on board with this. Very good. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for engaging. Saralyn?
There we go. That is the end of the content that we have prepared for today. I hope that what we talked about today resonated with you. Again, this is a little bit early stages for us. We do hope to launch some sort of cohorted program this year. It likely won't be until at least late winter. And we look forward to, if there's any other information you want to share about what you're looking for in a certificate or a certification, what pieces are particularly important to you. If there are topics that you feel like are missing or are vital, we really want to know. So I've put the link to our program page up on the screen there, and actually I will pull it really fast to put it in the chat as well. There is information on that page about the workshops and webinars that we currently offer, as well as a form that I think a lot of people who signed up for this workshop or this session already filled out, which we're calling an advanced interest form, which answers some of the questions or has some of the questions that we asked here today around kind of what you're looking for, why are you interested in this, as well as gaining some other information about folks who are interested. If you signed up for this session, you are on our list now for future information about DEI programming. And if you have any questions or thoughts, please feel free to send me an email. It's on screen there, but I'm also putting it in the chat for you. I am happy to talk about what you're looking for in a program like this, what kind of needs your organization has, what kind of structure your organization has to support building this kind of internal capacity, to see how a program like ours might be able to help, and making sure that we can build our program to help with those things from the beginning. When we have more information about the program, which we should, I'm hoping by the end of the summer, to have a little bit more information about what the structure is going to look like and the cost, we will send that out via email. We will probably also post about it on our blog. So if you've not signed up for our news, our little blog that we have yet, I highly recommend it. I want to thank Denise for being here today and helping facilitate this, and also for the many, many hours already that she has spent in helping me think about this program and bring people together. So Denise, you're a rock star and I love you. So I very much appreciate you. Thank you, Diego.
Thanks, everyone.
I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.